wondering where you are. Looks like you didn't come home last night. But you should know Mom's pretty pissed about it. But just hope everything's okay.
So I co-wrote the script with a writing and producing partner of mine, a guy named Don Thompson. And when we were writing the script, each of us brought our own sensitivities and things that we were sort of interested into it. Something for me that was always interesting and kind of resonated was this idea of just looking at a story through the lens of how do we as individuals, how do we think of ourselves, how do we view ourselves, specifically like, what do we tell ourselves about who we are and what kind of a person we are, and how's that impacted when we're put in situations where we have to make difficult decisions. And so I think all of the main characters in the film are kind of dealing with the same question of how far are they willing to go, what are they willing to do to protect the people that they care about. And I think for Lee, our main character, that's the same question, and she's an interesting character to me because she's always viewed herself as different, particularly than she views her father. And this is a time when she's sort of challenged to reevaluate, like, what is she willing to do? Can she still hold the same grudges against him that she does because of the things he's done in the past? And what does it say about who she thinks she is, given the things that she finds herself doing? And so, I think we viewed this as a story that was sort of a character piece wrapped in a genre film. Hopefully it does maintain that degree of tension for the viewer and that sort of edge of your seat sense. But we didn't want it to just be, tension for the sake of tension. Like, hopefully, if we did our jobs, then it feels like an authentic character who's, trying to make decisions in a realistic way and just kind of doesn't find herself with many good options. Bethany, who plays Lee, she's in every scene in the film. So she never got a break, never had a chance to sort of, decompress and gather herself between scenes that she was in. Obviously we would have times when we were setting up for a new scene and she would have a short break, but on an indie film you don't have a lot of time in between scenes. So that was a challenge, and we knew that would be a challenge. I didn't really realize just how big of a challenge that was going to be until 4 or 5 days into shooting, and sort of realized, like, she just never had a chance to take a break, and that's tough for anybody. The other thing that was I think difficult about this one, is oftentimes she's not acting in scenes with other people, or if she is, there's no dialogue happening. Maybe she's hiding in a shed and trying to avoid detection or something. Giving the audience a chance to really feel and sense what she's feeling was sort of the goal. I do think the location and the setting and where we chose to sort of do this was intentional. We viewed it as the place between the towns, like, rather than even thinking of it as a small town, it was sort of a place between the towns. There is no central hub of town. There's no communal gathering places, and that was all tied to a larger theme of disconnectedness and the characters just not really having other places to turn for help. So, that sense of isolation, the sense of loneliness, was very much a part of the idea that this is existing in a place and a time where there aren't stronger, more effective social structures that are helping to support these characters and helping to provide, anything from guidance to advice. So everybody's sort of feels like they're on their own and trying to, do the best they can, left to their own devices. And I think that's part of what gives it that sense that you're describing. Well, certainly those sort of themes of the sins of the father, you know, are very present. I think the corporate, you know, guilt thing, it like they may be isolated societally, communally. There's a certain level to which you can't get away from your family, even if you want to. In Lee's situation, I think she would love to be, you know, sort of disconnected completely and forever from her father. But you know, the film explores the ways in which that's not possible and it's not an option for her. And the same types of things that she's experienced growing up with her father, she's now worried about passing on to her son. On the other side of the ledger with Danny, who you know, you could call an antagonist. I don't really view her in that way. I think she's kind of a mirror image of Lee. The two of them are largely, you know, making similar choices, faced with similar decisions, and you know, similarly trying to protect the people she cares about. But in her case as well, with her son, you know, it's the same dynamic of you realize that the choices you're making have an impact on the rest of your family, and you're sort of passing down a heritage of sorts through your choices, and there's no way around that, really. I think those themes that you talk about, you know, I live in the South, in the American South. There's a, you know, a long tradition of sort of Southern Gothic storytelling, and I think Blood on Her Name is, in some ways, fits in that. You know, it's not necessarily a perfect representation of the genre, but those themes are very present, of guilt and redemption and sins of the father and so forth. References, you know, we had a few that were routinely discussed at different times along the way. Blood on Her Name is, you know, one of the films that we looked at, especially for its combination of character and genre, and the way that it sort of told a character piece in a genre film, was Blue Ruin, which, you know, is a great film, you know, small film, but that I think did a really good job of sort of taking a familiar concept of a revenge film, but, you know, turning it just enough on its head and just executing it really well through the eyes of a very interesting protagonist. Those were similar things that I think we wanted to do with Blood on Her Name. You know, the story itself is fairly simple. We tried to turn it on its head just a little bit through the presentation and the way that we enter into the story, by not ever giving you clarity around exactly what happened, other than through very unreliable sources. So we intentionally stayed away from flashing back to the night of the incident, you know, and wanted the audience to have to feel the same uncertainty and the same sort of evolving set of you know, circumstances that the characters were, to try to continually have to reevaluate, how do I feel about what happened, and do I think Lee was justified in what she did, and all that. You know, when you mention other American films recently, I'm a fan of Jeff Nichols and his storytelling, and, you know, he's similarly kind of comes from a background in the American South, and you know, there's probably some similar influences there. But yeah, those are a few of the things that we were kind of looking at and referencing along the way. Thank you, first of all, for talking to me and showing Blood on Her Name. Really appreciate it. It's always fun to have audiences get to see the film, whether it's in person or virtual.